Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Cybersecurity Recruiter podcast. Today, I'm joined by Kyle. How you doing, my friend?
Doing well.
Good. Yeah, nice to see you, mate. We had a minor technical glitch there. I was in a virtual podcast recording studio without a record button, so we had to switch rooms, but we're ready to rock and roll now, Kyle, aren't we?
We've already persevered today.
Nice to see you, my friend. I'm just going to do you a bit of an intro for the listeners that don't know who you are. Started off in sales at Life Christian Resources, was there for 2.5 years. Got a background in accounting as an accountant, started off as an intern and progressed nicely into much more senior and management roles. Now you are at Kirkpatrick Price, been promoted there on multiple occasions, started off as a project analyst, then got promoted up to director level, director of audit delivery, and you are currently the VP of sales. So yeah, welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's cool, mate. I know I've done you a bit of an intro there, but where I always like to start is who are you, what do you get up to, and what's a day in the life of Kyle like at the minute?
You know, I'm a new dad, so that's the day and the night in the life right now. I have a day job and a night job, it feels like. But yeah, I lead the sales team for a cybersecurity audit and penetration testing firm. My background originally was a CPA, and that's kind of how I ended up at the firm that I'm at. I've taken sort of a winding path, but now I lead a sales team of about 7 sales reps selling our services at Kirkpatrick Price.
Cool. Yeah, the new dad stuff, that's when the real work starts. I only recruit in the US car, but I'm in Dubai at the minute. So I've had a lot of my friends with their kids come out to Dubai and see me. And it's like, we're sat by the pool and I'm like, I've got kids. I'm like, is it this hectic? They're like, yeah, this is it. You just cannot switch off for a second.
Yep. I turned my back for a minute and he's over there turning on the Roomba in the corner or who knows what.
Yeah, especially when they're like diving in and out of the pool. I mean, you just can't take your eye off them, But yeah, that's when the real work starts. But yeah, no, cool, Kai. Yeah, so it'd be nice to get into some stuff today. I think there's a lot of the sales element that can help a lot of people. I know we were just chatting about this before we hit record, but I think the sales and the communication piece, I think in a slightly down market that we've been in, I think they're valuable at all times, but I think in a down market, they're even more valuable whether you're a job seeker, a business owner, or you're in sales. So it'd be nice to get stuck into that. The first bit I just wanted to get into is you've been promoted 3 times. Is there anything that you did differently to others, or is there anything that you think you did to progress that could help the listeners?
So I actually interviewed here in 2018, and the role I was interviewing for probably was not the right fit for me, which was fine. I interviewed with the owner, and he remembered me, 2.5 years later. He emailed me, and I came in and said, hey, I've got this new position that we're creating that doesn't exist here currently, and I think you'd be a good fit for, which was this project analyst role, which is this all-encompassing title that nobody knows what it means. But what he wanted was somebody to scope and price our audits and build the proposals. And it's funny that I was who he remembered and reached out to because, I didn't know anything about sales. I didn't know anything about pricing. And I didn't know anything about cybersecurity audit. So I was just like, why me? But I was looking for a challenge, and that felt like a challenge. And so I just kind of took that on with the owner here. And so I did that for about 2 years and did pretty well at it. But then there was a new need. And so there was a new position that didn't exist when I started at Kirkpatrick Price leading an audit team. And so I already had an audit background. I already knew all of the different services that we offer. I knew all our tools and processes. And so it just made sense for me to move into that role. But again, there were like so many things that I didn't know moving into that role. I never supervised auditors. I wasn't a technical expert. All of the auditors were CISSPs, and that's not my background. And so again, I would say there was a pretty steep learning curve for me. And then the third move that I made was to the VP of sales. And again, it was like all the steps along the way were preparing me for the next spot or the next thing. So at that point, I had already been on lots of client calls. I already understood our audits and audit projects. I talked to lots and lots of clients. I'd already sold some things. At that point, it just made sense to make an internal hire for the VP of sales role. I joke that I've just sort of accidentally stumbled into each position that I've been in.
Cool. It's a good story, that. Do you know what? Like the latter ones, like I really get. You've been in the business a while. You understand the different services that are being offered. That kind of makes more sense to me. What I'd really like to probably get into is you went for the interview, and then 2.5 years later, the founders remembered you and called you. What did you do to get remembered? Is there secrets you can let us in on?
I wish I had some novel advice to share that somebody could use. I did nothing. I never followed up with them. We didn't talk for the 2.5 years. I was interviewing for an accounting job, but it was pretty obvious that I didn't want to be an accountant anymore. I think it was obvious to him and maybe to me too. I just didn't want to admit it. And there is, with an entrepreneur founder, there's just some intuition and kind of unexplainable, intangible perceptions that they have that you can't replicate elsewhere. And so there was just something that he saw in me that I did not see in myself that he remembered. And I think secretly he was envisioning what happened to me. I think he saw somebody. It was like, if I can just give him this to start on, then that will develop him into something else that will be more valuable later. And so I think that's what Joseph was really probably after.
Well, yeah, no, kudos to him. He's definitely, not like a short period of time either, like 2.5 years. Got a hell of, well, there's obviously a few things there, but he's got a hell of a good memory as well.
He does have a good memory. Make no mistake about it.
Cool. All right then, Kyle. Since you've kind of refined and picked up and enhanced the sales skills, is there anything on that side you can share with us that you've learned that could help the listeners maybe for job seeking or like that?
Yeah. I'm on LinkedIn all day, every day. I feel like such a bad sales leader when I read LinkedIn. I see all these posts from people who just know more and have experienced more than me. For me, sales happens by accident a lot of times. I cut my teeth working with our existing clients. So they would have an issue pop up or a question pop up, and I would get on a call and we would work through that. And I would advise them on those calls based on my knowledge and experience. And we would get to the end of that call and they were like, okay, great. Can you send a proposal for that? And it was like, oh, I did all this advising work and it was actually a sale. I just didn't think about it that way when we were having a conversation. And so that's how I try to approach sales, is just, I'm a trusted advisor. I'm an expert in the field. And I think salespeople sell themselves short in their belief that they can't be that. I demoed a tool one day and I first talked to the sales rep. It was a SaaS platform. And then we had a second call and they brought in a sales engineer. And the tool was very simple. And I just thought to myself, why do you need this sales engineer for this? If you just expanded your learning a little bit, you'd be so much more valuable as a seller in this sales process. And so that's what I try to teach our salespeople. I believe they can know more than they think they can, and they can be experts that provide value to their clients and prospects beyond just being your traditional salesperson that's like a conduit to the smart people.
Yeah, I think as well, that way that I know this word gets used a lot these days, but the way that you're describing that you do things, it's just authentic. You're genuinely wanting the best for that person, and then it naturally just leads, because it's like this Hollywood myth, like this ABC, or, and that's just that's not the reality of what good salespeople are like. Their product or their service knowledge is phenomenal. And if you just do the right thing, especially if you're operating within a niche, if you do that again and again, you either get found out the right way or the wrong way. But if you're doing it the right way, I think as time goes on, things just get easier. And it sounds like that's the methodology you've adopted as well.
And this is so much different even than 5 years ago. 5 years ago when I started, a prospect would pick up the phone and call Kirkpatrick Price, and they would learn about their audit. They otherwise didn't have a lot of information available to them. And I think that's true of a lot of industries. That's what I've seen change in cybersecurity and technology sales over the last several years, is your buyer is so much smarter when they come to you as a salesperson, whether it's through AI or the private equity investments that were flowing around in 2020, 2021, 2022, flooded the market with knowledge. And so now, when you're talking to a prospect, you have to be sharper. because they already know things and they're talking to other salespeople who are sharper than they were 4 or 5 years ago. Idea that AI will replace salespeople. Well, AI will replace the bad, lazy salespeople. AI will do that better eventually. But there's a different feeling when you talk to a good salesperson. Like you get off the call and you just feel kind of at ease. You feel like that person understood you. You have clear next steps. You didn't feel pushed. There's a feeling that's just different when you talk to a good, smart salesperson.
Yeah, definitely. And I think everything's just so much more transparent these days. But like you say, lots changed in the last 5 years. I mean, let's say years ago, it was literally just a phone and that was it, maybe a little bit of email. But whereas now, like everything's out there. I don't know if you find this, but I find some people have kind of, if you're doing a bit online, a lot of clients have kind of half made their mind up sometimes before they've even spoke to you, because they've done their research and they can see what you're all about and speak to you,
Yeah. We've bought SaaS applications for our sales team to use this year. And both times I was ready to go. By the time I got with the salesperson, I was just making sure they could confirm what I already knew. I didn't go get 5, 6, 7 quotes or 7 or 8 demos. It was like, this one tool does this thing that I need it to do, and I'm just pulling the trigger on that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think because everything's more transparent, you can relate it to anything, whether it's buying a SaaS product for your sales team, whether it's someone getting a job about them on their GitHub repo or online or on LinkedIn. I think so, not the whole decision, but I think a large portion of the decision is made before, much earlier on in the process.
I mean, the same is true for recruiting and hiring. I've hired 6 salespeople in the last 9 months, and I recruit. I don't really post a job. I just find people on LinkedIn who fit some specific criteria that I'm looking for, and I just message them and I try to get a call with them. It's a lot like prospecting in sales. It's just prospecting for a different thing. And I typically know within the first 10 minutes of talking to them on the phone whether I'm going to hire them or not. Before we've even gotten into like the meat, because the reality is, your prospect kind of knows whether they want to keep talking to you or not in the first 10 minutes of the sale. And the same is true in recruiting.
Yeah. Kyle, when you're on LinkedIn and you're looking around for people, I think things are picking up now, but it's still a tough market out there for a lot of people. What is it that what makes you message that guy or girl?
I'll talk about some parameters and then just the LinkedIn profile in general. So the LinkedIn profile, I don't care about hit 126% of quota, 3-time President's Club, like the things that you think I care about on your LinkedIn profile, I do not care about. It's like, that was not at my company. I don't know what type of sales enablement you had. It wasn't even the same product. So those metrics are pretty meaningless to me. I look at things like the type of roles that the person's had. Have they sold something that is similar to our product? Now, I don't hire people that have sold audits before because I'd rather just teach that from scratch than try to unteach what you've learned selling. So I look for people who have sold to our type of prospect. We sell to CISOs. So have you sold to CISOs before? We're security leaders. Have you sold a service before? If you've just sold hardware, it's not the same thing. And so that I'll exclude you. And then I actually don't logo hunt. You having worked at CrowdStrike or Salesforce or HubSpot is a negative for me, not a positive, because those are totally different companies than my 150 person CPA firm. So I look for somebody who has probably sold at a weaker brand, maybe with some weaker internal processes and weaker enablement. Like one of the guys I hired, he was one of one salespeople. He had to set up his own Salesforce.
Yeah, cool.
They didn't have a marketing team. They didn't have sales enablement. And so when he gets here, what we have is easier than what he had before. Whereas if I take somebody from CrowdStrike, they're going to come here and be so disappointed in all of the things that we don't have.
Yeah, I think if they're coming from a massive logo, even if they think they hadn't have the support, it's probably quite easy if you're coming from a CrowdStrike to take for granted just how much infrastructure. You've got a huge brand behind you. It makes a difference. Makes a huge difference. So
yeah. So that's what I'm looking at when I'm recruiting. But yeah, the stuff I don't care about is like how much quota you hit. I don't even know if that's true. So why would I care if it's on your LinkedIn profile?
Okay, cool. So types of roles, making sure they're selling to a similar prospect. In your case, it's CISOs. Ideally, they've sold a service before and really don't care about big logos. If anything, it's probably a disadvantage. Been a bit more kind of raw around the edges, can do it themselves without much support. Cool, my friend. And in the first 10 minutes, is there anything folks do in that first 10 minutes that you like, or anything they do that they don't like that could help the listeners?
It kind of goes back to what I said about the founder and the intuition and remembering me. Good salespeople ask good questions. And so that matters to me, the types of questions that the seller has. But again, a lot of it is feel, because how you make me feel about you in the first 10 minutes is how you're going to make my prospects feel in the first 10 minutes about the product or the service that we're selling. And so it is a lot of intangible stuff. And I look for different things. There's not like a one size fits all person. I have one seller who I describe as his optimism is his superpower. Okay. And, that just kind of flows out when you're in calls with him. But then I've got another seller who's more of an analytical, very aggressive personality type, very decisive. And then I have another seller who's more of just like the calm. He's always like kind of laid back in his chair, and his voice just is so calm, and you kind of just get comfortable with him. And so all three of those are totally different, but all three work and have value. I can really feel it when somebody's just kind of full of it. I'd say that's the thing that I most quickly can just tell and get off of, is the person who's probably not got a lot of skill. They're over fluffing their experience. They don't really have good questions as we're talking. That's clear quick.
Yeah. I think it all ties in with what you're saying about things changing for the last 5 years, because I think that stereotypical sales guy or girl, it probably worked like 20 years ago. But you say, I just don't think it does anymore. I'm thinking to a couple of my friends that do really, really well. And if you met them, you just wouldn't think they were salespeople at all, but they're phenomenal. And it's tying in with a lot of the stuff he's saying. I bet the calm guy, I bet he never gets too down. He probably never gets too excited, but he never gets too down either. Like, nice. When he gets the setbacks, which you do in sales, he's never, he probably can just keep going, and he keeps his head straight, I'm imagining.
Yeah, I envy it. I'm the opposite. I'm like all the way up or all the way down. There's like no middle ground. So.
Yeah, cool. It brings me on quite nice. I know you said you're managing 7 people. I was going to ask you about managing people. How's that? Is there anything that you kind of know now that you wish when you first started out? Any tips on that front?
Well, I've managed very different people. So when you think about the auditor type personality, it's very organized. Compliant is one of the words that I use to describe auditors. And then salespeople, it's just like a totally different personality type. But some of the principles still stay true. One of the beauties about sales is how pure it is. You just know exactly what the goal is and exactly how you're doing with that goal. There's no ambiguity in that at all. And it makes it really simple to take this big goal, whether it's team goal, individual goal, whatever the case may be, and start to work backwards from that to what do I need to do each day, each week to make that happen. And so that's how I think about it. Selling $1 million is a big goal that can appear very scary, but setting 3 appointments a week is less scary and feels more attainable. And so you just like take this big goal and work it down to small goals. And I get buy-ins. Our sales plans are very mutual. I leave a lot of room for creativity. I believe that sales is a very creative job. I mentioned the different personality types. They have 3 different ways about going about their business to hit their goal. And there's some things that we know do and don't work, but I try to leave a lot of room in there for the salesperson to be creative. And so they actually make their own sales plan for the quarter, and they present that to me, and we have a conversation about it, and we get agreement. But then it's your idea. And so you as a seller, when you're not hitting your goal, it's the things that you presented to me that we agreed on. And that's been really helpful. It creates kind of this entrepreneurial dynamic within the sales team. That's one of the things that I notice on LinkedIn a lot is how systematic and structured a lot of the sales leaders and voices talk about it. I'll just say I'd be bored to tears if that was the way that I had to sell, was just like through this almost cattle chute. So we try to be creative and give some ownership to our salespeople.
Yeah, cool. I like the way of getting people to present, because I think there's probably a bit more emotional attachment to if, like I say, if stuff's going wrong, you're not as inclined to give up as easy, I think, because it's your baby, your idea. It's like, yeah, I could see that. I really like the way you recruit as well, because I've been posting about this quite a bit recently. You're basically not relying on adverts, you're going out to get people. And I think many employers should be doing more of that, because it's a better caliber of person as well. I really believe that.
Yeah, when we post the job, we'll get 70 applicants, and I won't interview one of them. Most of the 70 don't even really come close to meeting the qualifications that we laid out in the job posting. So the only reason I post the job is I found it does give me a little bit more credibility when I reach out to people to recruit them, that there is actually a job posted that they can go and look at, and I'm not just some weird guy that's messaging them on LinkedIn. But that's the only reason that I post the job. Otherwise, I wouldn't even do that.
Yeah. I tell you what as well, Kyle, there's a lot of paranoia in the job market, because there's been so many recruiter scams out there and stuff like that. And I don't know if I've had to like literally point candidates to LinkedIn posts and go, look, the founder of that company has liked my post. You can see I'm actually, and it's like, I was like, wow, it's like a fairly recent thing, like loads of paranoia.
I interviewed a girl and she was looking for a job because she had moved to a city to take a job, and it turns out the job wasn't real. She'd moved, so she was there.
Oh, wow. No, I've seen it on both sides. I've seen it on the side that you described it now, and I've also seen it where, like, I've heard of AI agents coming on calls. They have the screen blanked out around your head, and they've got all the answers on the screen, and you can blatantly, I'm sure you're the same as me, Carl, but anyone that's been recruiting for a while just spots that in a nanosecond, okay, cool. And so you get the buy-in on the presentation, and there's no scope at all for that presentation. It's just however they want to approach the market, they can do it their own way.
We've got a little bit of structure, but when you start talking about events we're going to participate in and different types of campaigns, one of the salespeople said, hey, I want to do a handwritten note campaign. Some of his outbound cadence involved handwriting notes. Somebody else had a very specific event in their area that was influential to type of buyers that we would be after. And so he really leaned into that, which was just unique to his city, his market. I kind of put it on them to figure out what is happening in their area, what makes sense, what they're good at. Like I wouldn't be a good handwritten note guy. I wouldn't be a good conference guy, but I could get people to go play golf with me. And so that would be like my outbound strategy, was just putting together golf events and golf outings, and I would get people to do that. And that's how I would go about my prospecting. So people have things they're good at, things they're not good at, and we need to be honest about that together and lean into what you are good at and have the energy to do. If you asked me to go to 7 conferences a year, I probably wouldn't hit my goal, and I'd have to go find another job.
Yeah, I think you're right there, because it's about what's sustainable for the individual as well. You're right, because there's some people out there, they can literally do 200 cold calls a day for years on end. And I know guys like this that can do that, and they're absolutely fine doing it. But if it's not great for them, but it's not really how I like to do business. I don't think it's how you like to do it either, Carl. It's finding something that you can stick with for really long time. That's when you get the results from the consistency, isn't it?
Yeah. So I don't think there's one right answer, and I try to leave it to each salesperson to find the right answer to them. And don't get me wrong, we're not the Wild West. We have ideas there are things that I say no to on those plans as well.
Well, they're really wild, these ideas, some of them.
Sometimes they're really wild. Sometimes they're just too many ideas. It's like you've brought me 10 things that you're going to do this quarter, and I know you'll do 3 or 4. So let's just pick the best 3 or 4 and try to hit those.
Okay, cool. I like the handwritten note. I've heard similar handwritten letters. Did that work well?
Yeah. I mean, it's how our firm was founded. Our firm started off some handwritten notes, and it stands out because I get 7 or 8 spam calls a day. I get 30 junk emails a day. Most sellers and prospectors are not willing to slow down and be thoughtful and intentional enough to write a handwritten note. And so that medium cuts through the noise.
It's like slow down to speed up. You're so right with that, because everyone just wants to automate the hell out of everything, copy and paste everything. But if you do just slow down to speed up, it takes a bit more effort, it takes a bit more thought and a bit more care, that you get results quicker, definitely.
Yeah. We don't even pay for contact data anymore because it's just not worth it. Like the Zoom infos and Apollos of the world, everybody wants to run these huge AI generated sequences in there. And so it just has gotten so loud that we have to find different ways to go find the people that we want to interact with. So it has to be to your point, it has to be much slower, more thoughtful and intentional. But it works for us. I mean, we get leads and deals through this more high touch, interpersonal outbound process.
Yeah. I think talking about what you mentioned as well about things changing, that's a massive change I've noticed, because on the email campaign side, again, 3-4 years ago, I found that email campaigns, they used to work. I used to be able to win new clients fairly frequently from drip campaigns. I think in the early days, before everyone realized they were drip campaigns. But these days, just those automated emails. I mean, even if you've got phenomenal emails and you use AI and they look really personalized, they still don't work on the client side. But I found that on the candidate side, if we've got the same job requirement again and again, and we've mapped the market out and we've got some personal emails, I found on the candidate side, for getting candidate calls on the diary, that it works pretty well. But for trying to win actual new business, I think email's dead now.
And I'm sure it'll come back. Like, this stuff will be cyclical. I don't think email will be dead forever. Even calls. I mean, we've had some success with calls, but like, I think I'm pretty representative of millennials. If there's a number that calls me that's not saved in my contacts, I don't answer it. And they'll leave a voicemail if there's something that they really need. But you know what happens? Nobody ever leaves me a voicemail because it's one of the auto dialers. So I didn't answer the phone, so there was nobody there to even leave a voicemail. I would actually listen to the voicemail if somebody left it. That's only happened one time. There's been one seller who left me a voicemail, and he sent me an email and a LinkedIn message. I replied to his LinkedIn message, and he never responded.
Oh, wow.
There it is.
Done the hard work.
So
I just think it's really nice listening to it. I remember when we spoke before, because me and you were talking about calling, and we were talking about, I think you were saying, you never answer the phone. And I think I said to you, look, because I still do some cold calling, and when I do, I leave a voicemail and I send an email, and people respond to the email because they know that it's a real human. But I think from like job seekers' perspective, and I know not everyone can do this, but for people that can, if you have got the front to pick up that phone and call someone and just leave them a voicemail and send them an email, if you're a genuinely good fit for that role, and you do that 20, 30, 40 times, I'm pretty sure you'll get 2 or 3 interviews. I think there's so much that people can learn. And years ago, again, you didn't have to do this, but I think if you can do that now, it really does make you stand out,
Yeah. I mean, that's how we got connected. You sent me a message with a personal video on LinkedIn, and nobody does that. And so I responded to that, and I sent it to my sales team, and I was like, hey, this got a response, and here's why. Here's what I've been saying. Here's why. And I think for a candidate, this maybe is taboo, and there's places that this wouldn't work, but I've never had a candidate who applied for the job do anything other than apply for the job. Yeah. They never reached out to me or the hiring manager. It would have caught my attention. I would have at least looked at their resume, because I don't even look at the resumes of the people that apply. We have an internal recruiter who sort of filters that, but I never feel compelled to go look at those because I know there's nothing useful in there. But if somebody applied and messaged me on LinkedIn and said, hey, I applied for the job that you have posted, like, that would catch my attention. I would at least look at their LinkedIn profile and probably check out the application. But nobody does that. It's the same problem we have in sales. They want to sit back and do a bunch of what I'll call easy, busy work and hope that it pays off.
Yeah. For people listening, and this isn't just for sales roles, like you're selling auditing services and client facing services. If someone's a pen tester or carrying out audits, if they can show that they are communicative, presentable, can think outside the box, can reach out on multiple channels, that's really going to help for any role where you're working on an advisory or a consulting client facing basis.
Yeah. It's a
So, yeah.
requirement for our salespeople to call a lead back in under 15 minutes. If somebody fills out a contact us form, we call them, we pick up the phone. We do not send an email. We don't schedule a call. We dial the number that the person put on the form within 15 minutes. And we get deals that way. One of the salespeople posted in our chat week before last that he talked to a prospect and they said, I did my initial call and got my proposal review with you before I even got a call back from any of the other firms. And so I probably just won't even bother getting quotes from them.
Yeah, because I like it as well. If I reach out to someone and they're just bang straight on, I'm like, wow, these lot are proactive. Like, I like it. You know, should I call them? Yeah, just get on the phone. And I think as well, it's becoming more and more of a USP because less and less of people are willing to do it. So, yeah. Because the videos, Kyle, are great. Like, I've actually got the company I've been trying to get hold of for ages. And this chap came back to me on Friday night or Saturday, and I look back. I've been sending this guy videos since 2023. You know, leaving some time between a video, voice note, message, asking him how he is. And he came back at 12 outreach or something over a couple of year period. But it just shows, I think, as long as you're polite with it and the service that you're offering, I don't see any problem with it, you know?
Yep.
So,
it makes you seem real.
Yeah. I like the videos, and I really like the handwritten note. I'm not surprised to hear that handwritten note worked well. Like, I'm really not, because no one else is doing that either, really, you know?
Even Gong sent me something, and it was pretty good. My wife said, hey, you got a package. And I was like, I didn't order anything. So I open it. Now, this is in March, and it's a Gong basketball goal and ball. And I was like, oh. And the guy had sent me a note on like a postcard in there with the goal and ball. Now, the note would have been fine, even without the spin on the ball and the basketball goal. I didn't care. But it was March Madness themed. You know, there was kind of a pun to it and blah, blah, blah. But where he messed up was the card was in handwriting font. You could tell the difference. So anyway, I replied to his email. I was like, you know, we're not looking at getting a tool right now, but I appreciated the creativity. But it would have meant just as much to me if he had just sent me the postcard and had actually taken the time to write it out by hand. I didn't need the goal. People get a little swag crazy in sales and marketing. It's like, I didn't care about that.
He sounds like he got a fair bit right. Sounds like he did pretty well. He got a response as well.
He got a response.
All right, Kyle, I used to ask which book has had the most positive impact on your career, but it doesn't have to be security related, but it can be any book or podcast or content that you consume that's making you the best version of yourself that could help the listeners as well.
I mean, there are lots of books back here on my shelf. Obviously, there was a pricing book that was very influential as I started pricing. That will apply to a lot of other places. I would say it's a John Maxwell book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. I paired that with my mentor. So it wasn't just that I read the book. It was that I read the book with my mentor. We would cover really short chapters, which is kind of nice. You can crack through a few at a time. I would meet with him every week, and we would talk about 2 chapters a week. And that was super influential. I started that book with him about 3 weeks before I took the sales leader role. And then that was just the Lord's timing. You know, I did not know that was going to happen. He's actually a president of a company, but he came up through the sales. So he was a direct seller, a sales leader, and now the president of the company. And so I was going through this leadership book as I was trying to figure out how to lead a sales team, and I was doing it with a much more successful sales leader. But they're quick law. You know, when I read a book like that, it's like, how much can you actually take away? So I always try to have like 2 or 3 important lessons or tangible things that I take away from that, or whatever the self-help leadership book is that I'm reading. The first chapter in that book is the law of the lid. It talks about the leader being the lid on the team. That's something that's a challenge for me. I'm the expert on our team and our services. It's really hard for me to get out of the way and push that knowledge down to somebody else and not be the lid on what the team's capable of doing. I just like do everything myself. That's the book that I would share as far as just influential in leadership.
Yeah, it's like your founder's psychic. Like he knew you could do all this stuff before you started. Then it's like he could see you that you were doing the mentor course, and then you put in that exact. Then it's like he's moved you into this role. It's something wheeled out.
I don't want to give him too much credit. It will go to his head. I don't want to give him more credit than he deserves on some of that stuff.
Yeah, I think going over when you've got a good book and you're going over it with a mentor, it's reinforcing the knowledge in your mentor's mind and in your mind as well. It's good to do like that.
Yeah, it gives you a framework for conversation. That's how I describe it. It gives you a little bit of a shared vocabulary on the conversations that you're having. I value, I have a men's group that I meet with every week, and we do something similar. We'll go through scripture or a book like that, and having that sort of language and structure to the conversation brings a lot more value to the book than just reading it cover to cover on your own.
Yeah, no, cool. That sounds good, Carl. All right, my friend, as we come to the end, you got some big plans to see, was it like another 17, 18 weeks left this year? Doesn't sound too long when you say it like that, does it?
I know.
Is it going to be a big push for the end of the year?
We're like every other sales team. We're going to push really hard to hit a goal by the end of the year. That's what we're working towards. And we're working on healthy habits too. So not just can we hit the goal this year, but are we doing the things that will make us successful next year? Are we just lucking into a sales goal because we hit one big deal and got kind of lucky? Or are we learning processes and patterns that will translate to success next year?
Cool. Thanks, mate. It's been nice to chat. Thanks for taking the time. I know you're busy, so I appreciate it. And yeah, mate, it's been good to see you.
Thanks for having me on, Tom.
Thanks, mate.